Hi, Kevin. I hear you're being let out of the office this week.
Hey, Victoria, I am. Everything's bigger in Texas, so I'm going down to the Jamf Nation User Conference, JNUC 2023. I can't wait. Are you going?
No, I'm afraid I'm not joining you this year. So I'm going to join virtually from the comfort of my own home in the UK. So probably with a glass of wine for some of the sessions.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, JNUC is the place where all of the customers in the enterprise and in the education come to hear the latest and greatest about the Apple technology and, of course, any updates on Jamf and the Apple ecosystem. So I think you can learn that virtually. You don't have to be in state with me.
I expect I'll manage it. I'm sorry I'm going to miss your session, but I've just been going through and looking at the agenda, and I've done my usual thing of wanting to go to multiple sessions at the same time. There's some interesting stuff around innovation that I'm really looking forward to listening to. What are you hoping to get out of it? What are you looking forward to?
You know, I always get inspired by our customers' problems. If I hear a customer's having a challenge with deploying certain things more than once, then I start building solutions for them. And so in these environments, I get to sit in the back of the room and kind of hear what our customers' pain points are and really start to decide what our plans are for next year.
And so you're basically going to be spending a lot of your some of your time listening to the sessions and then quite a lot of it chatting to people.
Yeah, I'm a social butterfly. And so that's the other part of it, is seeing all my old friends from Apple, seeing the folks that have bounced around from different companies and made their bones as sort of Mac admins that are now business executives and looking to kind of standardize on Mac in the enterprise. So it's really exciting time. JNUC 2023 in Texas. Last year was San Diego, and you were with me.
Yeah, I was. And you know, the thing about these kind of conferences, they're really great networking opportunities. They're really good opportunities to meet different people and have different conversations to the ones you have on a day-to-day basis. So I'm looking forward to talking to you when you get back and finding out all the new and exciting things that you've learned.
And there's some on-demand sessions. If people can't attend, they can always go to jnuc.com and they'll be able to look at some of the on-demand sessions.
We'd better get into today's interview then. So we have with us today Dave Gruver, who's a field CTO working with some of our large global customers, and he's going to be here to talk to us about how you decide whether deploying Mac at scale is actually the right thing for you to do. What are the factors you need to take into account when everybody's asking you to do this and you're trying to work out how to do it? But as Dave's going to explain to us, the most important thing is to work out whether you should do it first of all.
Yeah, he's an expert in this. He's been in the field for 25 years in the seat of CTO, and he can give us some real honest feedback.
So in today's episode, we're discussing how to work out whether deploying Mac at scale is right for you and your organization. And to do that, Kevin and I are joined by one of my favorite colleagues.
I thought I was your favorite colleague.
Well,
No?
You are. It's just I have other favorite colleagues as well. And Dave is one of my favorite colleagues, and I bet he's one of yours as well. He's a field CTO who works with large global organizations. He's spent his career in the end user compute space, working with other large organizations, supporting end user devices of all types and scale. And he has personal experience of implementing and supporting Mac at scale.
Well, thanks for joining us, Dave, and welcome to this episode of We Got Your Mac.
It's great to be here, Kevin. It's good to see you, Victoria. And you two are two of my favorites as well. I'm glad we get to work together.
This is a love fest. This is an absolute love fest. So let's just start with a bit of a background. Tell me about the kind of people you're talking to about deploying Mac at scale. Like, what kind of industries, organizations, what are their roles? And are they the decision makers, or are they sort of the technical resources, or both?
It's a lot of both. You know, the industries we're seeing it, whether it's finance or pharma or high tech or manufacturing, across the board, we're seeing more and more of our customers looking at opportunities to move Macs into their business. And a lot of these are, you know, sort of Windows-centric companies. So it's a bit of a new thing. You see it across the spectrum. There's some that are just starting out. There are some that are pretty far along the way. We've even got some customers that are already there, right? They've got 40, 50,000 Macs, but it's all across the board. And, you know, the people you talk to, it's the same, it's the mix, right? You've got the technical people that are worried about how do we get it done? What are the challenges? How are we going to overcome this? They may have some biases. And then you've got the decision makers that want it done, and they want it done now, right? If I wanted it tomorrow, I'd talk to you about it tomorrow.
It's interesting. You pointed to yourself when you said the technical resource. Do you consider yourself one of the system engineers or technical resources and not, say, decision maker?
In my old role, I was a decision maker. You know, the typical, I used to have technical chops, and then I got into management, and that all drifted away. But, you know, I'd like to think I still have a reasonable view of the technical issues involved in trying to deploy a different platform in an existing environment.
So with all these people you're talking to, Dave, what are the reasons that they want to go about deploying Mac at scale? What are the drivers for it?
You see a variety of things. I mean, one of them is a lot of them want to meet their new employees where they are, right? The emerging workforce, or, you know, sub 30-year-old workforce, there are a lot of Mac natives there. They're comfortable with the platform. They know how to use the platform. They're productive with the platform. If they're used to Mac and you give them Windows, it's a bit of a jarring impact. And it can even have an impact on how they perceive that company, right? So that's one aspect. Another aspect is they're looking for a little more sort of diversity and resiliency rather than just being in a sort of an x86 Windows world. If they can add Mac, they can give themselves some more diversity. They can give them some more resiliency against supply chain issues. And then there's others where they just look at it and think, you know, that's the right platform. It can provide some differentiated value versus their existing Windows world, or, you know, they may be Chrome, or they can have any number of platforms, but Mac adds to that for them.
We wanted to explore in this episode whether people should deploy Mac at scale, how to work it out. So I guess there's two sides to that, and we'll probably explore them in more detail. But high level, you know, why should people, and why shouldn't they? Why should this stay perhaps as a niche offering rather than at scale? Because there've got to be cases where sometimes it's right to deploy at scale and sometimes it's not.
Probably the number one thing is application compatibility. And you sort of see some general alignment. An older, more mature company with older apps that was built on a Windows platform, they've got thick client apps that are run. They may have challenges running those on Macs. If those are critical business applications, that's going to limit, right, who your targets for those Mac devices are. That's probably number one. You know, it kind of comes down to personas, right? Can you find personas that will benefit from this platform? And can you identify real benefits, perhaps in terms of, you know, maybe you get better total cost of ownership out of your Mac because you get a longer life cycle, and you can potentially reduce help desk calls, you know, excellent, you know, hardware quality that has less warranty calls, things like that can be an advantage. But you've got to offset that against, you know, app compatibility. Is your infrastructure compatible? Do you have the right tools to manage Macs? You start delving into that. Now you're getting into the whole business case of, okay, if we do this, what are all the things that we need to account for to make sure the Macs will run effectively? And what are the cost of those actions? And how do they offset, you know, the cost and benefits of the devices themselves?
So when you talk about critical applications, let's just get into that. Are you talking about Office, the Office suite, like Excel, PowerPoint, that?
That's the easy button, right? I mean, that's the beauty of it these days, right? With all these, you know, everybody's gone to the cloud. Yay, we're running on other people's servers. But, you know, the reality is if you're using Office 365 or you're working on a lot of web-based apps, Salesforce is a good example, or maybe you're using the Google suite, whatever, you're going to be fine with a Mac. That's the easy part of it.
So productivity suites are fine. Productivity suites are good. The CRM suites are SaaS-based. So what are the challenges, though?
Let's say you've got a work order entry system, right? You're a manufacturing company of some sort, and you've got this work order entry system that's homegrown, that was built on Windows. And the thing's old enough to drive, vote, and drink, right? It's been around for years, right? And how do you adapt that app that was focused on Windows to run on Mac? The cost of that could be exorbitant. Or you might be in a motion, a lot of our companies, right? They're in that move to cloud motion. So there's the companies that are doing just lift and shift, and there are companies that are doing adaptation of those applications to be efficient on cloud. That second category where they're adapting probably has a better chance. But again, it's those old apps that the company is really reliant, that are just really embedded in the company, that can sort of have that challenge for you. And that's where it comes back to.
So you really need to be thinking about what your overall technology strategy is as well. You can't just do this in isolation. You've got to have a look at your entire ecosystem if you really want to understand whether this is the right thing to do, which I guess brings you into the whole thing about the personas, because what they're using may well be what decides whether that person in that role is going to be productive. So can you give us examples of what might make a great candidate persona for having a Mac?
Yeah, I mean, obviously creatives, right? Because, creatives generally gravitate towards the Mac. It's a great platform for that. So if you've got people in your group that are in marketing, or they're in video production, or they're doing, content development, those right away, those are sort of the obvious ones. A lot of other ones, again, we would go back to this idea, if you're a company that's using things like Salesforce and SaaS-based apps, perhaps your own Salesforce is a good candidate. Some developers, depending on what your development applications are, can be a good candidate. You flip the corner and, is Mac the right thing to have out on a manufacturing floor? Maybe, maybe not, but tends, in those cases where you tend to have a lot more legacy apps, you've got much slower pace of change and development, you tend to be straddled with older applications, maybe not the best fit. And so I think one of the things is really to think about these personas. And the way I think about personas, it's sort of this expanding circle, right? At the center, you've sort of got commonality, right? Everybody needs to have email. Everybody needs to have collaboration tools. Everybody needs a certain security suite, right? And then you maybe go from there to, okay, we've got task workers and knowledge workers that are they have some different characteristics. And, can you span both of those? Or, hey, maybe, our task workers have just so many of these legacy apps, they're out of scope, but our knowledge workers, let's work on that. And then within knowledge workers, you're going to have, engineers, sales, finance, HR, things like that. And you just have to go through, and it takes a little time, but it's not just for Macs, right? It'll benefit you across your entire business if you really understand your personas, because then you can do real smart application assignment, right size your hardware, don't be buying pickup trucks for people that are, just going to the grocery store, right? That kind of stuff. And so that could help you.
It's starting to get a little complicated, but you hit on a point that is interesting, because I feel that some of the customers that I talk to start with those edge cases, or that, 20% that need that workforce management tool that you were talking about. But you just said, if you start with the critical applications, email, productivity suites, security tools, that could account for 80% of your organization.
Absolutely. And you've just got to do that. And, hopefully you've got tools. If you've got a tool like, SCCM or Mass 360 or, whatever your configuration management tools are, they should be able to tell you who's running what, who's got what on their machines. And you can do things like, in SCCM, you can run the reports of who's used what in the last 90 days. You'll always find, right, Kevin, we see this all the time, don't we, where somebody says, I've got, 40,000 copies of this, but only 10,000 people are using it, right? They've just deployed it and they're paying for it. That's a whole other savings opportunity, different podcast. But, there's ways to go through. The data is out there. You've just got to get it and then, sort of organize it and to make your decisions.
Victoria, hop in there.
Yeah, so you've talked about the tools that you might be able to use to manage or to get the information about who should be moving to Mac, who's a good candidate. Are you going to be able to use the same tools to support your Mac users and manage those Macs? Are you going to need new tools? Because we know IT like to have new shiny things. Are you going to have to learn to use the existing tools differently? So is it more tools, different tools, same tools? Nobody's going to want it to be the same tools because that's not fun. But how are you going to deal with this?
There's certain tools, if you've got something like Microsoft Intune, if you're a Microsoft shop and you're using Intune, you can manage Macs. If you're using something like IBM's Mass 360, you can manage Macs. If you're more legacy using SCCM, you're out of luck. You're going to need another tool. But then within that, the next decision is, this is where you've got to, again, step back. What are my requirements? what do I need to manage on those Macs, and can I do it with, if I have an existing tool, does it meet those requirements? And if not,
What about the team? I mean, you got the requirements down, but what about the team? Does your team even know how to manage Macs, or are they very much Windows centric and you have to upskill them as well?
yeah, I think a lot of cases they'll be Windows centric, and you may have to upskill. I think you'll also find if you talk to your staff, you've got, technology people are technology people. They like, as Victoria said, they like new shiny things. How many, Kevin, you're a good example. You live in our world. It's kind of we have a lot of Windows users, but you're a Mac guy, right? You know it. And so you find those people within your technical teams that actually have that sort of passion for a different platform, and they can become sort of your leaders of the charge, and they can help, they can lead. They may need more skills, but they're passionate about it. So they're ones that are going to lean in, and they can bring some others along. And, you can also augment staff. There's a number of ways to do it, obviously. But yeah, you typically need slightly different skills. And I think you need a little different mindset. I think it helps because one of the mistakes I think some companies do is if they're Windows-centric, they buy Macs, and then they try to manage them exactly the same as Windows devices. When you do that, you don't really take advantage of the differentiation in the platforms, right? We always talk about in other worlds, right? Diversity is king, right? That different views, thoughts, it's always really good. Well, it's the same thing with platforms, right? Diversity can be a good thing, but you've got to allow that diversity to come up. You can do different things from a security perspective on Mac than you do on a Windows. And so it helps to understand that.
You were saying, you think this might be oversimplified. It sounds like there's a lot to dig into there, and maybe we need to get a couple of guests along later in the series to talk about both management and security in more detail, because it sounds like there's an awful lot we've got to unpick there.
Yeah, because what I'm going based on is unified endpoint management, right? This holy grail of single pane of glass. What Dave is saying, diversity is okay, especially as it pertains to Mac. It all depends on your requirements from your company. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, I agree. The single pane of glass is sort of the holy grail, right? And there are tools out there that can do it. Can they do it to your requirements? That's the key. You've got to understand your requirements. But that certainly is where the world is heading. I like the diversity in the platforms that can provide you differentiated capability and to really take advantage of that on the platform itself.
I'm kind of with you there, because people talk about a single pane of glass, but I'm not sure I necessarily want that flat single pane of glass. What I want is really good information and the ability to look at it from different directions to see what I want. So it's almost not having a single pane of glass and flattening out all of the information from different places, but actually bringing it in all into one place, regardless of the source. So using the best tool, best source of information, and then having somewhere where I can interrogate that information. I think, as Kevin was talking about oversimplification, I think the single pane of glass things maybe oversimplifies things as well, because where you do have the diversity, it kind of blurs it away.
Yeah. So we've hit a lot of great points. If you had one more tip, Dave, what would it be?
I would ask that, think about this. If you're thinking about Mac, think about it in terms of total cost of ownership. And so think about device acquisition cost. That's part of it. Think about the device lifecycle length. So think about that, break that down on an annual cost versus maybe what you're doing with your existing platform. Think about any additional infrastructure costs. Think about any skilling that you might have to, train people up, but also think about savings you might get in terms of lower support costs. And then also, it's harder to quantify, but start digging into employee satisfaction and engagement.
Are they happy with it?
Yep. That can have a big impact.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. So just to summarize, you had 5 questions that you said people should be asking to work out whether Mac at scale's right. So will the critical business applications run on Mac? Can you define your personas that are really going to benefit from using Mac? Making sure that you understand the level of understanding your IT team have of the Mac ecosystem, and that might not be what you think it is, because they might be passionate about Mac, just not currently using it at work. Checking that your existing configuration management platform will support Mac the way that you need it to, and checking that your security systems are also compatible with Mac in the way that you need them to be.
Yep, those are key, right? Those will if you can check all those boxes, you're on your way to the races, right? And it's just understanding those will really help you.
Well, great. We'll have to have you back just to talk a little bit more about the total cost of ownership. I really do think most of our customers are looking at it from the device cost level, and all the things you just rattled off there would be interesting as another episode. So with that, we want to thank you for your time, and yeah, we'll turn it back over to Victoria to close it out.
Happy to come back anytime, Kevin and Victoria. It's good to see y'all.
Great.
Good to see you too.
Thanks very much, Dave.